should you lease or buy your medical office building? How is commercial real estate lending different than residential? How would physicians get involved in commercial real estate investing? Learn the answers to these questions and many more on this episode of the Talk to Me Doc podcast.
Welcome to the Talk to Me Doc podcast, where it's all about serving the early career physician. Let's talk about the unique issues that face us so we can create a better future for ourselves and those to come. And now your host, Dr. Andrew Tisser.
Hey guys, it's Andrew. Welcome back to the Talk to Me Doc podcast. I am so excited to have you here today. For my returning listeners, thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me. For my new listeners, welcome. You're going to like it here because today, like on every episode, I'm bringing you the best guests from all around healthcare and beyond to discuss issues pertaining to the early career physician. Today, I have Colin Carr on the show to talk to us about commercial real estate. Colin Carr is a commercial real estate expert who has successfully completed over 1,000 commercial real estate transactions while saving his clients hundreds of millions of dollars. Colin founded and scaled Carr, a nationwide commercial real estate company, to specifically represent the needs and interests of healthcare providers. Colin has mastered several niches in the healthcare real estate industry and is passionate about helping others maximize your profitability through real estate. In 2009, when Colin founded Carr, their no conflicts of interest approach of not representing landlords and sellers was an idea that was met with open arms from hundreds of dentists, physicians, veterinarians, optometrists, and other healthcare providers. Today, Carr is the nation's leading healthcare real estate advisor with a team of experts that span coast to coast. Well, I'm excited. Let's get Colin up onto the show here. Colin Carr, welcome to the Talk to Me Doc podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, I already recorded a little background about you for the listeners, but in your own words, could you describe who you are, what you do, and if you have any relation to the healthcare industry?
Absolutely. I have been in commercial real estate in some form for almost 20 years now. I started managing apartment complexes when I was 19. I got my broker's license when I was 20. And this is all I've ever done in my professional career. I started our company in 2009, Carr Healthcare Realty. We're now just Carr, but started Carr Healthcare Realty in 2009 with a game plan of only representing healthcare tenants and buyers. So very niche. We got commercial real estate as a niche, then only in the healthcare space as another niche, and then only representing tenants and buyers, so healthcare providers. And we launched that in 2009, had tremendous success over a number of years. And now we are in over 40 states, and we have the privilege of representing several thousand healthcare providers with their real estate needs on an annual basis.
Wow, that's really exciting stuff. So I think starting with the basics for my listeners that are maybe still in training or just out of training, what is commercial real estate and why should doctors care?
Yeah, commercial real estate is going to affect the vast majority of doctors because it's the type of property that you locate your office in. Unless you have a strictly mobile clinic where you're going to people's houses or you're strictly telehealth, everyone else has to have a physical location where patients can come to you. So your office space, whether you're located in a hospital campus, a medical office building, a traditional office building, a retail strip center, there's a number of different types of properties. You're going to have to deal with real estate in one manner or the other. And when you own a practice, real estate is typically the second highest expense behind payroll. There's occasionally it drops to the third highest expense if you have huge equipment or technology or merchandise or lab needs. But typically, real estate's going to be the second highest expense behind payroll. So it's an expense and it's an item that every practice has to deal with. And the difference of a properly negotiated transaction or a poorly negotiated transaction, it can impact your cash flow by tens of thousands per year, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of space that you occupy.
Okay, so it sounds pretty important. Well, if you're just starting out, then what are the different means of getting some real estate for your practice? Where is that be leasing versus buying your own building?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot of really favorable scenarios for doctors that want to start their own practice or want to get their first location from a leasing perspective. And here's why leasing can make a lot of sense for doctors getting started. In commercial real estate, landlords will offer concessions for tenants to lease their spaces. And this is across the board, whether you're a healthcare provider or whether you're an office user like a Charles Schwab or a Merrill Lynch or a Lockheed Martin or a Verizon, or if you're a retailer like a Chipotle or Starbucks, doesn't matter. If you're in commercial real estate, landlords will give you concessions and they will find ways to motivate you to lease space from them. And that comes in the form of them giving you a tenant improvement allowance to help build out the space. And it depends on the amount of build out, but that could be for a third of the space, half the space, or the entire space, depending on how much it costs. They'll give you a free build out period, so you're not paying rent when you're building out a space. And oftentimes they'll give you free rent to offset your startup costs or offset your moving costs. And then other concessions to help you get inside the space. They're motivated to get you in the space because it means they're going to get cash flow for the next 5, 7, or 10 years. And so in commercial real estate, it's customary for the landlords to push hard to make deals, and that's part of it. Residential, you might get a month of free rent as a move-in, benefit. Well, a lot of times you get nothing if it's a competitive market. Commercial real estate, on the other hand, they give large concessions and they will do things to attract you to their spaces because they want that cash flow.
Oh, that makes sense. That's pretty cool. Well, in what scenario would you recommend someone or a group of people just starting out to purchase their own property rather than lease?
Yeah, we love purchases, and we personally recommend that you should always consider purchasing in addition to leasing as well. A lot of times people have their mind made up prior to understanding their options, prior to going to the market and seeing what different type of properties are available. And we typically tell clients or anyone we're talking to, don't predetermine that. Instead, go to the market and look at all your top options. Look at your top options to lease, look at your top options to purchase, and then compare the two side by side. The best way to do a comparison is a purchase versus lease comparison. And that allows you to analyze the strengths of each deal. Specifically, when it comes to a purchase, you can look at concepts such as, what is it going to cost me up front when I cut a check either to the landlord or cut a check to my mortgage lender? What does it cost per month to do that? What's the effect on my cash flow? Second place you want to look at it is, what type of tax deductions do I get after benefits such as depreciation? If you own real estate, you get to depreciate the real estate. There's other benefits there. And you can find yourself in a scenario where it might cost more to own real estate than leasing. But if you find yourself in a place where you're getting huge tax deductions, you might end up paying less in taxes monthly or quarterly. And so the effective cost of owning could actually be less than leasing. You might cut a check up front on a cash flow basis that's higher when you own versus leasing, but you might pay a lot less in taxes to where the effective cost of owning is even lower than leasing. And then the third area you look at is principal pay down. If you were going to cut a check to own a property or own a space, and that was, let's say, $8,000 a month, but every month $3,000 or $4,000 went to pay down principal, and you were building wealth, your net worth increasing every month you cut that check, your net worth goes up because you're paying down principal and building equity. That's a phenomenal way to do it. And so that's another justification or reason of why you might pay more for a purchase than a lease, because at the end of the day, the effective cost of owning could be considerably less, and you're building an additional asset with that.
Yeah, that's a great point. All of those points are great. I think once you start getting into pretty complicated scenarios, as the listeners can see when you're looking at those things. So that's why people like Colin exist. But so what if someone comes to you and say, well, I want to purchase, but I got all the student loan debt, and how, what kind of financing terms are there available to purchase office space?
Yeah, if you are a physician or a dentist or a veterinarian, if you're in the healthcare industry, you are able to get financing that few, if any, other industries can even come close to getting. And the reason being is the healthcare default rate is so low. Lenders know that if they lend to a healthcare provider, that the chances of them getting that space or that building back are going to be as low as any industry that they lend to. And because of that, they'll oftentimes allow you to get into properties with a much lower down payment. There's SBA programs for healthcare providers that are extremely competitive. And right now, we've never seen interest rates this low. That's true in residential. It's true in commercial. People are buying houses right now, in the low to mid twos. again, it's unprecedented how cheap the money is. On the commercial side, we're seeing rates in the 3s and the 4s and the 5s. Depends on how much money you want to put down, depends on what length of a loan you want to do. Long story short, there are amazing opportunities to purchase real estate right now. And specifically, when you look at the question you just mentioned, the student loan impact the ability to qualify for financing, it typically doesn't. Most lenders realize that healthcare providers are going to have a student loan. It's very rare for a healthcare provider not to have a student loan unless they had a favorable scenario with a family member paying for it or something like that. They expect you to have a student loan. They expect you to have either a mortgage payment or to have an apartment or a rental. They expect you to have a couple car payments, and they expect you honestly to have even a credit card or two. So when lenders look at underwriting a healthcare provider who wants to purchase real estate, they acknowledge those concepts. They look at it. They make sure that the person can pay their bills. But most of those personal expenses get pushed to the side, and they're going to underwrite the deal based upon the strength of what they believe the practice will produce. And they realize that the practice has to pay one person or another. They're either going to pay a third-party landlord and rent, or they're going to pay a mortgage lender and own. And so that's how they look at it. And most healthcare lenders would prefer you to own real estate because you're building that asset, and it's something that's actually tangible. You have principal pay down, you have net worth, and the terms are very favorable for healthcare providers to buy real estate.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction with commercial and residential real estate. For the listeners, a few weeks ago, we talked about healthcare specific residential mortgages and how it all comes down to a concept of risk. Whereas in the commercial space, it's really about how the business is going to perform, whether that be on a practice side or on an investment side, and less to do with how the individual's finances are at that given time, if I get that correct.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. They know you're going to have a student loan. They know you have to have housing. They know you have cars. They expect you to have other expenses. And so they're going to make sure those aren't crazy or out of whack, but they're going to look at those as being pretty standard, push them to the side, and they're going to focus on, will the practice be able to pay this expense? And if they're going to let you lease a property, they're typically going to let you purchase one as well too.
Yeah, that's fair. I think shifting gears a little bit for those of my listeners that perhaps are in specialties that are hospital based or really can't own their own practices. It's my personal opinion that commercial real estate is one of the best investments you can make for a lot of the reasons you already talked about. The multiple benefits of owning real estate, the favorable tax write-offs, the depreciation, the ability to have debt pay down over time by your tenants, et cetera. So is it I mean, I know you're kind of biased, but do you think it is a favorable investment for physicians in general to consider commercial real estate to put some of their extra money?
I do. And we have a lot of clients that choose to invest in commercial real estate as a way to diversify, to build wealth, and to create additional assets and income streams.
Well, Colin, I think people get a little sticker shocked at it and get concerned and say, well, how am I going to buy in $1 million apartment? I think it's important to make the distinction that really anything over 4 units is considered commercial real estate. So physicians and other healthcare providers could get involved with a 6 or an 8 unit apartment building and don't necessarily need to go right for a 80 unit giant building.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want to make sure that you have the ability to understand the asset, to operate the asset, and that you're not getting over your head. The good news in commercial real estate is that lenders are going to pay a lot of attention to those concepts too. And they're going to do the best they can to make sure that someone doesn't get in over their head when it comes to how large of a property they're purchasing.
Sure. And same concepts really apply, that it's really more about the asset, in that case, the building, and the cash flow. And we don't need to get into complicated discussions of NOI and things like that, but that the numbers make sense for the bank rather than more the personal side.
Absolutely. Yeah. So whether you're looking at multifamily, like your 4-plex, 8-plex, like you mentioned, that can be a great way to get into commercial real estate. There's other retail strip centers or office buildings or office condos. We have a lot of clients that will purchase those as well. And it just depends on how comfortable they are with the asset base. We have people that will buy additional spaces that are built out for healthcare because they understand that it's a very desirable location or space. And if it has a great build out, that it's going to be easier to lease, and they're going to also lock into long-term leases. And that's one of the benefits of true commercial properties, is that in commercial properties, meaning commercial tenants, office users, healthcare users, et cetera, the average lease is going to be 5 to 10 years. And so there's a little bit more cost to maybe make those deals and expenses up front. But if you find quality tenants, you lock into long-term cash flow, and a lot of those properties will take care of themselves over a very long period of time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I think, Colin, what if you have a doctor client that maybe them and a partner or a couple, want to get started in some commercial real estate investing? What's step one?
Well, step one is to decide if you want to go the multifamily route with a 8-unit building, 10-unit building, apartment complex concept, or if you want to go with the commercial. They're both technically commercial, but I'm using commercial terminology as a commercial office user, a commercial retail user, a commercial healthcare user. Do you have a preference in one of those directions? That's step one. Step two is to determine how much you have in the form of a down payment that you can invest in the deal. When it comes to commercial real estate for a healthcare provider's actual space, there's programs where you can get in for 0% down if you're actually going to occupy a portion of the building for your practice. If we're talking just solely an investment strategy where you're not going to be occupying it and you're strictly an investor, you're not an owner or an occupier, you're strictly an investor, those scenarios typically require 20 to 30% down payment, depending on the size of the property. There's always some exception as far as a lender that might do a little bit more competitive deal, but typically those are 20%, 25%, or 30% down payment. So the next question is, how much money do we have to work with, and how much do you want to put into the deal? If you got $100,000, that's one thing. If you got $500,000, it's another thing. So it's important to figure out what type of loan structure are we looking at? What's the maximum price you could purchase? And then that will help to determine what properties you're considering. So that way you're not wasting your time looking at properties that you can't qualify for financially or that don't make sense for you.
Sure. And I think once you get more advanced, there's other strategies, but we're talking strictly investor financing through a bank.
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, you can get creative. I mean, there's current owners that will do seller financing. There's ways to get very creative, but keeping it fairly simple. What type of property do you want? Do you want to go multifamily? Do you want to go commercial? What's your down payment? Do you have a certain part of town that you want to focus in? And then also it's another aspect is, who do you want to help you with the project? These properties typically require someone to be a property manager if you don't want to be getting the phone calls that, that someone's toilet backed up, or that, someone left the sink on and it flooded the unit below you. Or if it's commercial, the trash company hasn't emptied a dumpster for a week, and what's going on. Most people and most physicians specifically don't want to spend the time and energy to take those calls because they have a much higher return available to them if they stay in their practice. So the question then also becomes, what type of a management company are you looking for? Who would be a good fit? And finding a really good property management company to manage the asset is paramount to keeping you with as minimal amount of stress as possible and not having you get pulled into the minutia. Just like people come to you for the specialty that you're in, you want to go to the property manager for the specialty that they're in, whether it's multifamily or it's commercial. Let them do what they do. You do what you do. You're going to pay them for it, but it's very good money well spent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm of the mind that this should be made as passive as possible. Whereas, of course, finding properties and finding people to manage your properties is a little more active. But yeah, you don't want to be getting those calls at 1 a.m. That doesn't make it worth your time. So let's say someone decided they want to do multifamily. They have X amount of dollars available, and they have maybe some good referrals for a property management company. So how does someone go about actually finding finding real estate for sale? Are there brokers that will talk to an inexperienced investor?
Absolutely. So our company, we focus exclusively on healthcare. That's all that we do. There's other companies out there that focus exclusively on multifamily. And all these brokers do is work with buyers and sellers of apartment complexes. And they're the ones that are going to be in the know. They're going to know properties that are coming available that are not listed. They're going to have listings that are available, and they're typically going to be a wealth of information. So again, just like the concept of having a physician specialize in a specific discipline or area, it's the same thing. In commercial real estate, you have brokers or agents, all they do is industrial. You have some, all they do is healthcare. Others, all they do is multifamily. And my recommendation is to search online and find people that sell apartment complexes. Search apartment sales, apartment real estate agent, multifamily brokers. And in most larger metro areas, there's going to be a number of companies and firms that do this. And you start by just having a conversation, figuring out who you like, who is responsive to you, who returned your call on a prompt basis, who's giving you the information that seems like they're trying to truly help you, and who's interested in a long-term relationship. And typically you'll find people that you trust, and those are the people that you want to start the process with.
Yeah, you answered my next question is how do you find a good one? But I think you got that one already. So, yeah, usually that would be the way to go, right? Is getting in with a broker. Otherwise, I think it would be pretty challenging to just kind of find an apartment for sale.
Yeah, and there's always the opportunity for the do-it-yourself situation. And if you happen to know someone that owns an apartment complex and you want to work a deal, that's one thing. But if you're just trying to jump into a new industry, especially a new investment asset class like multifamily, I highly recommend you don't take the do-it-yourself approach. You're not going to save money. You're not going to get a better deal without a broker. That's one of the biggest misnomers in commercial real estate. People think, well, if I don't have a broker, I'm going to get a better deal. The only time that's true is if you're the seller and you're choosing to sell it yourself and not pay a listing agent. Anytime you're acting as a buyer or a tenant, there's going to already be a commission set aside that's built for the listing agent and for the buying agent or the tenant's agent. And so in commercial real estate, if you're acting as a tenant or a buyer for your own practice or for an investment, you're not saving money by doing it yourself. The listing agent's going to get a double commission. And that's a great one to wake people up on, because it's the equivalent of saying this. It's the equivalent of an insurance company is going to already pay a reimbursement for something, and then the patient doesn't go and get the procedure done or doesn't go and see the doctor. The insurance company had the money set aside. They were planning on paying it, and you don't go thinking that you're going to save money. It wasn't going to cost you anything in the first place. The payment was going to be made already, and you just missed out on the best of both.
Yeah, I get that for sure. That's an important distinction. I think that's a misconception by a lot of people. And as far as like some of the more creative financing terms, can brokers help mitigate that with the seller, or is that more of a something you got to do outside the broker's expertise?
No, a good broker should be able to help you with the financing 100%. If the broker can't help you with the financing, they're probably not a good broker. They should be able to help you understand what lenders are going to have the most favorable terms for that asset class. Again, going back to healthcare, we have lenders that we're aware of that offer 100% financing with commercial real estate. You can purchase a several $1 million building with literally 0% down with a fixed rate for 25 years. That's unprecedented in most circles. We have lenders that specialize in helping people that maybe don't have the best credit. If they have some dings on their credit, maybe they had a short sale or foreclosure, maybe they had, a divorce and they've got some challenging financials. There's lenders that, because they're healthcare, they'll still stretch further to make a deal when a traditional big bank lender wouldn't. And so when it comes to the individual asset class of multifamily or industrial or healthcare, there's going to be lenders and relationships that your broker has that other people aren't aware of, and they can help sort through which of 30 banks you call, and they're going to say, here's the 2 or 3 banks that you need to talk to. These are the most likely to do your deal with the most favorable terms.
That I didn't know. That's great information. So I guess this is kind of a loaded question, but what do you think of getting in now to real estate investing, given current events and kind of the state of the economy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we are getting that on a daily basis. People are asking us, what's our current projections? What do we think? And so I'm going to give you my opinion. It's fairly well researched, but I will give the disclaimer. It is just my opinion. So here's what I can tell you. Right now, interest rates have never been this low before. This is the lowest we've ever seen rates. When you got money that's this cheap, you can afford larger buildings, more expensive properties, because ultimately it comes down to what's your payment per month. What's the cash flow, what's the payment, and lower interest rates allow you to do things today that you couldn't do before. So from a financing perspective, it's never been a better time to do a transaction. When it comes to the economy being a little unstable right now, it really depends on what sector you're looking at. So I'm in Denver, Colorado. Right now, single family and multifamily construction is at an all-time high. The majority of the home builders are up anywhere from 20 to 30% this year over where they were in 2019. I've spoken with several people that work in the new construction industry, home builders, and a lot of them have already exceeded 2019's entire numbers in the month of August. Wow. I've got a couple of good friends that are in the mortgage industry and own good sized companies in the mortgage industry. Same things there. Same thing's true there. A lot of these companies have already exceeded their entire 2019 numbers so far, August of 2020. So when it comes to single family construction, multifamily, that is not slowing down in the majority of markets, especially in the suburbs of major cities. The growth is unprecedented. If you're looking at investing in a rental property, single family house, or a multifamily complex, I don't see there being any reasons to really slow down or consider doing that. To me personally, you're never going to be able to time the market perfectly. There's too many scenarios, too many variables. Let's say the market slows down a little bit, but rates go up, or let's say things happen. It's always a guessing game. If you can afford the property, if you have the down payment, if you can get a tenant in place and it cash flows, I highly recommend looking at your options right now. I would not sit on the sidelines right now trying to time it perfectly, because there's never, quote, the perfect time. There's always some variable. And when it comes to pricing, people want to go back, 8 or 10 years and think, yeah, but things are so much cheaper. Yeah, but rates were also higher. And on top of that, the economy was struggling. And so people couldn't pay as much. So you might have been able to buy a property for cheaper. However, there was less people that would pay the higher price per month or per square foot. Financing was more challenging. And so sure, you can buy it for cheaper, but it doesn't mean that many people are around to actually lease it. So there's always a give and take. My long story short here, summary is, I would not sit on the sidelines and not do a transaction right now. If you want to get into real estate and you want to purchase, there's enough reasons why it makes sense to consider it. And at the end of the day, the ultimate guideline is the deal's got to make sense. If the cash flows, if you've got the down payment, if the market dipped a little bit and you could still take care of business, you had to lower the price, if you could still cash flow it, that's the foundation of a good deal. If you could find a good deal, I'd tell you to do it.
Agreed. I mean, I think that's the point, right? If the numbers work and the property cash flows, it'll cash flow now, or it'll cash flow in a bad market. Might as well go for it, assuming you can fill it and pay for it. So yeah, that's great advice. Yep. Thank you for that. Well, I want to just transition the show just to get to know you a little bit more. So Colin, you gave us a little bit about your background, but what do you like to do for fun?
I have a 9-year-old daughter, 11-year-old son, and love to spend time with my family. Been married now for 16 years. Love to travel. Love to spend time in the mountains in Colorado. Summertime, we've been up to a couple places, rafting, biking, hiking, stuff like that. Love to ski in the wintertime. And thankfully, we've got some sports starting back up here again. There's obviously the shutdown for a while, but we've got tennis going, we've got soccer going, we've got baseball starting up again, and so a lot of family time, and then any trips we can get away, we love to explore and love to take a break.
Great, yeah, which is very important for all of our high-powered clients, right? Is take a break. But so could you give perhaps a real estate book recommendation for the listeners, for those just getting started who want to learn more? Well,
if you're going to stump me with one question, that is the question. I honestly do not have a book. We have kind of written our own book internally as far as how healthcare providers should approach their office space and their transactions, but that is not something that we publish. That's kind of our game plan. So I honestly don't have a book to recommend. I'm sure there's some great ones out there, but I guess I think even more importantly than a book is if you can find somebody who's in the know in the industry you're looking for, that person can give you the cliff notes, so to speak, of how to capitalize. And like many things in life, if you know the right people and they give you the right information, it can put you years ahead of the competition.
Fair enough. It's like anything in life is talk to a lot of people and ask a lot of questions, right?
Yep.
So how about just a personal book favorite? Got any books that you like?
That's a great question too. I don't think I have read a business book in a number of years. I have a handful of books that I read personally, but I don't think I have a good recommendation there either. I read on a regular basis, but nothing that's going to be generalized to the public, unfortunately.
Oh, that's fair. Okay, great. So, if you could give just a single piece of advice to newly graduating physicians or those docs early in their career, what would that piece of advice be in regards to your area of expertise?
The advice that I would give is you should always hire professional representation and hire key advisors in every area. Don't try the do-it-yourself mentality, especially if you don't know. It's one thing once you become seasoned and savvy to take on more responsibility, but whether it's investing financially in your retirement or an investment account, whether it's your taxes with a tax strategy, with a really good CPA, if it's commercial real estate, getting a really good commercial real estate advisor. Just don't try it yourself. You see this with your entire industry. People come to you as a healthcare provider in your specialization because you have additional training. It's what you do every day. And people recognize you're going to do a better job than a generalist. You're going to do a better job than somebody who is just guessing or trying to fumble their way through it. Hire professional representation in any area that you're touching that involves the high dollar negotiation or decision. Taxes, investing, real estate, architectural, construction, whatever the area is. Don't try to be the jack of all trades. Don't try to be the guy that figures it out and makes a ton of mistakes. Let people that are seasoned navigate the way, and they're going to help you save a ton of time. They're going to help you avoid costly pitfalls and complications. And ultimately, it's going to help you make a significantly higher amount of money in the situation that you're in.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Pay for it now or pay for it later, depending on what you're doing. But a good advisor in any realm of your life can save you tons of time and tons of money. And when your time is as valuable as ours is, really, yeah, you'd be silly not to do that. So, Colin, if my listeners want to get in touch with you and your company, or perhaps learn more about what you do, how can they find you?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of our company is our website. And that is carr.us, CARR.us. We've got a resources tab on our website on the nav bar that has dozens of articles, educational blogs. It's got FAQs, commercial real estate glossary, dozens of photo albums, ideas for floor plans, finishes, etc. Tons of educational information. And then in the upper right-hand corner, we also have two tabs. One is find an agent. If you want to get in touch with someone that's in the market that you're located in, or if you're moving somewhere and you want to talk to a local market expert, you can reach out to us that way, and they're happy to start a conversation with you. And then the last thing we have is we have a tab for a free evaluation. And what this is that if you're in a lease and you want to know how do my terms compare to the market, or did I do a good job or a bad job in my last negotiation? If I wanted to purchase real estate, how would that compare to my current scenario? We'll do a free lease evaluation, a free purchase versus lease evaluation, and we can tell you exactly what your options are, what it looks like financially, when you should start your next transaction, and we'll arm you with a tremendous amount of information that'll make sure that you don't miss some obvious concepts and that you're the best poised to capitalize on your next deal.
Great. I'll put the link in the show notes for the listeners. So, Colin, thank you again for coming on the show and enlightening the listeners on an area that's important, but definitely not outside of our wheelhouse of information. So I want to thank you again for sharing with our listeners.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care. What a cool episode with Colin Carr. He really knows his stuff. I really liked the discussion about leasing versus buying commercial real estate for a medical practice. He talks about how commercial real estate lending is more favorable despite student loans and is based on how an asset will perform rather than personal financial holdings. He also discusses the basics of commercial real estate investing. Well, I hope you enjoyed. That's all we have for today, guys. Please, after listening, if you enjoyed, go give me an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps get the word out there. If you need any direct help with career transition, career strategy, goal setting, or any of my other services, please look me up on any social media platform as either Andrew Tisser or Talk to Me Doc. Otherwise, until next time, keep talking. All opinions expressed by the guest in this episode are solely the guest's opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Andrew Tisser DO, Talk to Me Doc LLC, or any affiliates thereof. The guest's opinions are based upon information he or she considers reliable, but Andrew Tisser DO, Talk to Me Doc LLC, nor any affiliates thereof warrant its completeness or accuracy. The guest, Andrew Tisser DO, Talk to Me Doc LLC, or any affiliates thereof are not under any obligation to update or correct any information provided in this episode. The guest statements and opinions are subject to change without notice.